office up there with the city attorney and me and Gary McKay or, you know, Randy, and Greg would just go batshit crazy. I thought I knew every bad word that was ever published or used, but he put them together in sentences that I didn't know was even possible. I go, Greg, you know, he was the mayor. And I'm thinking, this is just revolution. But I went after him the first couple of weeks in a row. Got there, a bunch of us and had drinks. Before I got home, he was on the phone to me, telling me this and telling me that. I said, you just shut the hell up. I'll be to see you in the morning. And I was there at his office at 8 o'clock. I had 3 people getting between me and the door because I was going after him. I said, she's not going to talk to me that way. You don't talk to me that way. Not anywhere near that way. When he finally got the message, it was like, we'll coexist. We don't have to like each other, but we'll coexist. You know. But I just can't believe how people, you know, what gives him the, but you know what, I was a Teamster. I worked with UAW. I was in the military. I've done and seen a lot. And I'll tell you what, Greg Goodnight can't even hold a candle to the professional attitudes I've taken. Not even hold a candle. Professionals. These are generals. And I go, Lieutenant, come here.
Good evening.
Oh my God.
Call to order tonight's meeting of the Kokomo Common Council. Would invite you all to stand for the invocation if you would like.
My short's long enough.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for allowing us to come here just to conduct the business of the city of Kokomo. We thank you for giving us the grace and the ability to move on behalf of the people. We just thank you for everything you do in our lives. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilman Rudolph.
Here.
Councilman Roger Stewart.
Here.
Councilman Tony Stewart.
Here.
Councilman Matt Greenfield.
Here.
Councilwoman Carol McKibben. Here. Councilman Greg Davis.
Here.
And Councilman Tom Nickler.
Here.
Absent tonight is Councilman Acord and Councilman Collins.
All right, thank you. I believe everyone received the minutes from our October 18th meeting in your packet. Would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I make a motion.
Second.
All right. Having motion made and seconded, I'd ask all that are in favor of passage of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Minutes are approved. All right. Would invite Mayor Moore to come forward. Well, I mean, next on my list, communications.
Oh, very good. Good evening, council members. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you those that are here present and those chiming in. As promised early on when the whole issue on the ARP funds that were being made available to cities and counties throughout the nation, there was concern as to how the city of Kokomo was going to proceed with the planning and spending of ours, and I know the approach that we took, and I appreciate the council's support in that, was different than the counties and others, but having your trust and assurance that we were going to work together to address projects and look at things as they came along, and still meet bi-weekly and proceed that way. At that time, had promised to give bi-monthly, quarterly, whatever updates, and so I wanted to give everybody the update now. I appreciate those that have been in the rotation, because as you know, we can only meet with up to 4 of you to still work within the public access laws in Indiana. And so again, thank you to those of you that have rotated in those meetings, and I encourage those that have not had the opportunity to try to work that in, and if we need to move the meeting times from our Wednesdays before the previous or the following meetings, we would be happy to do that to accommodate those that may not be able to make the Wednesday morning ones. But just to give a quick update, a lot of it is what we've already kind of talked about. I mentioned things in the state of the city. There's been interviews in regards to the city's plans, the recent READY application that we in Howard County joined with Cass County, Miami County, Tipton County, Fulton, and Clinton County. Feel like I left one out. Anyway, that regional group to submit an application to try and secure the $50 million to cover the projects, in the region. So some of those are also what we are considering with the ARP. So just some quick updates on where we are on those that really have set plans in place, numbers and figures and such. Obviously, and everybody's probably getting tired of hearing about it, as such, the hotel and conference center, that is still on the top of the list to being able to utilize some of the ARP funds. We're also waiting till the end of the year to see if, again, the READY grant is approved, because that project is included in that to the tune of $5 million from that award or from that grant. So that, as well as what we're proposing, approximately $3 million of our ARP, will help, again, cover the costs of the eventual hotel and conference center and free up a lot of what we're able to do with other projects, and obviously fits within the restrictions, as hospitality being one. The revenue replacement, that is where the controller's office looked at city finances through the pandemic, came up with a dollar amount of which we can then apply ARP funds to then work toward other projects. The rough estimate of that is $3.6 million as well, which again frees up the opportunity to work on additional infrastructure, park upgrades, and other things that we've had to kind of put on the side burner. Another project that we've talked about almost to great lengths is the industrial park. We're getting close to closing on the ground for that, and obviously one of the permitted uses is infrastructure or water or waste. There's a pretty high sticker dollar being assessed or proposed for the infrastructure for the park, so having the opportunity to use these ARP funds for that. This project is also part of the READY grant to the tune of $5 million as well. So there's the opportunity with those. As many have already heard, and again, I thank you for your blessing. We did commit $700,000 to Ivy Tech for their training lab out there, the Industry 4.0. So really excited to use that, because obviously that fits into the workforce development component of that. One of the other items, again, hospitality and tourism, even outdoors as nature, in nature, we're looking at additional lighting out at Jackson Morrow Park along the trail line. Tory Rowe has got quotes back on that. The approximate amount of that is right around $281,000, so he's getting quotes back to secure that. We've also talked about the flooding issue out by Stellantis there on Boulevard. That's plagued our community for a number of years, and again, part of the solution to that is, again, water and wastewater and infrastructure in nature. So we're working with the folks at Stellantis for that, and we've applied for and are securing a SWIFT grant to the tune of $562,500, which will again help assist with that potential project. And most recently, and this one's kind of ironic, we talked about it at the last meeting, the Downtown Farmers Market had approached us in regards to their new indoor market space and the need for a new kitchen area. We are considering assisting them with that to the tune of $60,000. And the reason I say ironic, I was at a conference 2 weeks ago with a controller and an attorney, and in one of the workshops that they were talking about permitted uses of ARP, one of the panelists it actually said, yeah, one of the communities I'm working with is working with their downtown farmers market, putting it in a kitchen. So that's a permitted use, and again, will help spark additional economic development and fits into those. So that is the update for now. As some of you know that have been in those meetings, there are other projects that we're considering. Infrastructure out to unserved areas. Part of that, we're still waiting on approval back on a grant that's been applied for that, as well as a few other infrastructure projects involving wastewater and troubled areas that still feeds into the hospitality aspect as well. So that is the update at this time. Again, I appreciate the involvement and communication that we've had. I'd be happy to answer any questions any of you may have that, or even speak to something that I may have missed or overlooked from those that have been in those meetings.
I guess the one thing I wanted to probably just clarify so that everybody understands that the monies being proposed for the downtown hotel and conference center are for the city's share to cover the conference center portion of it.
Correct.
The hotel part is being provided through private development and
Yeah, and thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, that's been one of the misconception is that, you know, that the hotel and conference center is both the entire project is being funded or subsidized, so to speak, you know, or contributed to by the city, county, and CVB. But in a sense, although it's one unit, it's two separate projects, because the conference center, which will be owned and managed by the CVB, is that aspect of the project is what the city, county, and CVB are working with. Just the developer of the hotel will then also develop the conference center. So, yeah, thank you.
all right. Well,
Very
I
good.
appreciate the ongoing conversation,
And
thank
I
you for
appreciate
being
it too.
with us tonight.
Anytime. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right. Any communication from the council? Any communication from the public? All right. Would ask the clerk to read ordinance 7011 by title only, please.
Ordinance 7011 is an ordinance of the common council of the city of Kokomo, Howard County, Indiana, establishing local funds for grants awarded under the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021.
Mr. Micklick?
Mr. President, I move that we adopt ordinance 7011. And whereas the, excuse me, I'm sorry, do I have a second?
Yes. Is there a second? Mr. Stewart, thank you.
And whereas the city of Kokomo is a duly organized municipal corporation, and whereas the common council is empowered to establish local funds, and whereas the Indiana State Board of Accounts issued Examiner Directive 2021-1 requiring an establishment of a separate fund for each grant award through ARP. Now therefore be it ordained by the common council that establishment of the FTA ARP Act Section 5307 Operating Assistance Fund and the FAA ARP Fuel Reclamation System Fund and the FAA ACRGP Tank Liner Fund, that the council hereby establishes the FTA ARP Act Section 5307 Operating Fund. The fund number 1770, the FAA Fuel Reclamation System Fund 1780, and the FAA Tank Liner Fund, Fund number 1790, to be designated as local funds. The city controller shall keep records and monitor activities of the ARP fund. And the effective date of the ordinance shall be in full effect and force upon adoption and compliance tonight. With that said, Mr. President, I move that we adopt ordinance 7011 on second and final reading.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak to ordinance 7011? All right, hearing none, I would ask that all that are in favor of passage of ordinance 7011 on second reading signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, ordinance passed. Ask the clerk to read ordinance 7012 by title only, please.
Ordinance 7012 is an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Kokomo, Howard County, Indiana, for additional appropriations.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt 7012 on second reading.
Do we have a second?
Second.
The other, Mr. Stewart?
Mr. President, whereas the following funds have or shall be created for the following purposes, and this directly relates to the earlier ordinance that I just read. Fund 1760 in the amount of $9.9 million for the ARP fund. 1770, $287,000 for operating assistance fund for the ARP fund. Fund number 1780, $32,000 for installation of fuel reclamation system at the airport. And Fund 1790, $13,000 for a tank liner for the fuel reclamation system at the airport. And whereas the additional appropriation of such funds shall not increase the city's tax levy, and whereas such public hearing was held October 18th at the council chambers, now therefore be ordained by the city council of the city of Kokomo, the total expenditure of $9.9 million of funds deposited in 1760, the total expenditure of $287,000 on deposit of Fund 1770, the total expenditure of $32,000 on Fund 1780, and the total expenditure of $13,000 of funds on deposit of 1790. The counts for the installation of the tank liner. Therefore, the ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon adoption and compliance. Mr. President, I move that we adopt on second reading ordinance 7021.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak to ordinance 7012? All right. Hearing none, I would ask all that are in favor of passage of ordinance 7012 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ordinance passed on second reading. Thank you. Ask the clerk to read ordinance 7013 by title only.
Ordinance 7013 is an ordinance amending Title 7, Chapter 78, entitled Stop Streets and Alleys, Title 8, Chapter 78, entitled Yield Intersections.
All right, Mr. Davis?
Mr. President, I move that we suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 7013 on first and second reading.
Second.
All right. All in favor of suspending the rules for ordinance 7013 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Continue, please, sir.
Mr. President, I move for passage of ordinance 7013.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough.
The
Continue.
intersection of Wall Street at Gerhardt Street currently has a yield sign for traffic traveling south on Wall into the T intersection at Gerhardt as defined by ordinance 4509. The resident at this intersection is concerned that since there is not a mandatory stop required, some traffic goes through this intersection in an unsafe manner, not yielding properly. Replacing the yield sign with the stop sign would make this intersection consistent with nearly all other T intersections within the city. The intersection of Applewood and Dogwood, as is currently, has no sign of any kind for traffic heading west on Apple Tree into the T intersection at Dogwood. The traffic traveling north on Dogwood has a yield sign as defined by ordinance 5679, and the traffic traveling south on Dogwood has no sign. I would move for adoption on second reading.
Okay. Is there anyone that would like to speak to ordinance 7013? All right, hearing none, I would ask all that are in favor of passage of 7013 on second and final reading to signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, ordinance is passed. I ask the clerk to read ordinance 7014 by title only, please.
Ordinance 7014 is an ordinance amending the Title 5, Chapter 78, entitled Speed Limits ordinance generally of Kokomo City Code established 1982.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. President, I move that we suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 7014 on first and second reading.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor of suspending the rules for ordinance 7014, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Continue, please, sir.
Mr. President, I move for passage of ordinance number 7014.
So moved.
Mr. President, Francis Lane, which is in north of Rainbow, is an area that contains 53 residences, and there's currently a speed limit of 30 mile an hour, but the majority of the residents are elderly, me included. And there are no sidewalks, and often people speed up and down that little segment, even though it is a dead end and there's a cul-de-sac. In a June meeting by the HOA, it was unanimous that the residents would like the speed limit lower to 20 miles an hour to try to make it safe for the residents who either walk or some ride their scooters down the street. And it was prudent, so I ask that we move for adoption with second reading.
Is there anyone that would like to speak to ordinance 7014? All in favor of passage of ordinance 7014 on second and final reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, ordinance passed on second reading.
Painless.
Ask the clerk to read ordinance 7016 by title only, please.
Ordinance 7016 is case P22Z21, is a rezone from a C1, it's a small to medium scale general commercial, to a C2, medium to large scale general commercial for property located at 527 and 525 West Alto Road, Kokomo.
Okay. Mr. Stewart?
Mr. President, I move for the suspension of the rules and passing of ordinance 7016 on the first reading.
All in favor of, well, I need a second, I guess.
I'll second.
All right,
Second
thank you.
reading.
Mr. Stewart to Mr. Stewart. All right. All in favor of suspension of the rules for ordinance 7016, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, continue.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt this passage.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All right. Is there someone to speak to ordinance 7016?
If we need someone to, we can, but right now, there's no. Keep going, Greg, please.
Greg Sheeline, Director of the Kokomo Howard County Planning Commission. I apologize, I thought Mr. Perkins was going to be here tonight. Anyway, Scott Perkins owns CJ Car Wash there on Alto Road. That property just east of that, he's wanting to rezone that, put a small parking lot in to sell some used cars.
So, and I understand that's going to be attached to the top of the line
Correct, correct.
property and
Correct.
use that same driveway, so there won't be any other ingress or egress.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So I just, it's a small lot from what I understand. that
4 or
he's
5
putting in.
cars, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I think he's testing the water, to be honest with you.
Okay,
4 or 5 cars.
so, and no remonstrators at
No.
plan commission meeting?
No, sir.
Okay. Any questions of council? Anyone that
Will
wishes?
there be a building put on this?
You what?
Will there be a building put on
No,
it?
no building.
Just an empty
There's
lot
already a building there.
and lights, I'm assuming.
I think he's going to run the car sales out of the top of the line.
Okay.
Yes.
There's a building offset.
Pardon me?
There's a building in the back of it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak to ordinance 7016? All in favor of passage of ordinance 7016 on second and final reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. If the clerk would read ordinance 7017 by title only, please.
Ordinance 7017, case P23-Z21, is a rezone from an LI, low-intensity industrial business park, an M1, low-density multifamily residential, to an R3, which is a medium-density residential at the intersection of Zartman and Sandwalk Drive, Kokomo, Indiana.
All right, Mr. Stewart?
Mr. President, I move for suspension of rules and passage of ordinance 7017 on the first and second reading at this time.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. All in favor of passage or of suspension of the rules for ordinance 7017, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, continue, please.
At this time, I will have Mr. Greg Shuline or the arbitrist come and speak, just because there were a couple months.
We need a motion for,
I make a motion, please, at this time, I move that we pass this ordinance.
do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Sheeline, if you, or whoever, okay, yeah.
Good evening, Charles Russell with Arbor Homes. Our home office is 9225 Harrison Park Court in Indianapolis. If you turn your attention to the screen, I'll just do a brief presentation as an overview of what we'd be proposing as part of this rezoning. So the site is really an extension of our existing Webster Crossing subdivision. We would be extending Zartman Road to Webster Street to the east. The site is zoned LI and M1, so for light industrial and multifamily. We would be rezoning to R3, which is consistent with the Webster Crossing subdivision, as well as the residential that's to the east. We feel that the R3 zoning district would best fit what we have proposed for this site. On this site, we're proposing 69 lots with access from Zartman Road, and then access from, there is an apartment complex to the south, and they have a street that goes through their property. So we would have secondary access to that. It would either be secondary or emergency access. We would be in talks with them to see what they would be able to do. But as you can see, 69 lots, primary access from Zartman Road, and we would be meeting the R3 standards. At this time, we're not asking for any variances or waivers from the zoning ordinance, so we would be going in under the existing standards and conditions. This is a small sample of homes that we would be building here. They would be consistent with what's already being built at Webster Crossing. The homes here range from 1,300 square feet up to 3,200 square feet. We offer 11 unique floor plans to our buyers. Each of those comes with a handful of unique elevation styles, everything from traditional elevations to craftsman Tudor styles. And that's really to provide our buyers a lot of opportunity and choices for their home, as well as provide architectural diversity to the community and to the neighborhood. So with that, I am able to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
So in the middle, I saw a pond area that's for flood mitigation, I assume,
Yeah, we would have a couple detention ponds on site to handle any stormwater.
I'm super glad you guys are building there. The only concern I may have, and I know they may come up with in that group, is that they built quite a few homes over there recently.
Mhm.
And just the congestion possibly, and that, is that the only way you're going to go in and out? Is there possible another way?
For this particular site, and again, this is the access, we would go into further detail when it comes to platting this subdivision. But for right now, our conceptual access would be off of this extended Zartman Road, and then that secondary access to the south. At this time, there's not really any other access to that property.
I mean, I guess we can do it if it comes up.
Mhm.
Any other questions from council? Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak to ordinance 7017? I would ask that all that are in favor of passage of ordinance 7017 on second and final reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, ordinance passes. Thank you. All right. That is the end of tonight's business. Our next meeting is November 8th, here at 6 o'clock in the council chambers. So thank you all.
I expect ice cream and cake.